Hello everyone. Today I would like to talk about my second 500 km cross-country flight with the Duo Discus. I flew together with Alex and he recorded some videos with his camera. We started at 11:30 local time from the airfield in Straubing. I will give you some commentary about this flight and talk about some decisions we made. I will also talk about the ideas we had and if they worked out or how they worked out. We released at the Proller, which is at the beginning of the Bavarian forest. Our plan was to fly to the east and make a turn at the so-called Moldau Stausee, or go even further and make a turn in the near of Linz. But first of all, we needed a good line to become fast. That's why we decided to fly to the so-called Hauptkamm, where the Aber is. From there we could jump into the Czech Republic and find a good line directing to the east. There was only one small problem. The cloud base was too low, so we needed to fly more to the south around the Hauptkamm and find a new point to get into the Czech Republic. Another pilot told us that he made it over the so-called Großer Rachel. That's why we flew around the Hauptkamm over Zwiesel to the mountain called Rachel. We used the terminals at the Rachel to gain some altitude and flew into the Czech Republic. From there we tried to find a good line. But we were still cautious because of the difference between the clouds and the altitudes. The terminals got better and we found the first 3-meter lift.
Hey, ich glaube, bei mir hat es geupdatet tatsächlich. Ja, warte. Ah, jetzt läuft es wieder. Ah, da oben ist rechts von uns.
We flew in a short but good line and catched up to the other pilot in his Ventus. But he came up with the next problem. The cloud base got low, again. He told us that it would be tricky to fly further into the east. So we decided to meet him and fly together to the west and try the so-called Oberpfälzer Wald, which is next to the Bavarian forest.
Jetzt Lars, warte, du musst jetzt ein bisschen warten, du kannst doch nicht reingehen. Ja. Hast du eigentlich das ACL? Ja, nein, habe ich nicht. Dann machen wir ja. Der fliegt jetzt ab. Oder? Jetzt fliegen wir wieder. Der uns eingelassen. Nein, der fliegt ab.
At this point I made a small mistake. I made a turn into the terminal of the Ventus pilot, but I missed the lift and he left the terminal behind us. So I made a useless turn and lost some altitude. It did not make a big damage, but was just useless because we were already at the cloud base. After this turn we followed the Ventus to the west. We told him about our energy line and decided to use it again. We flew together all the way up to the Aber, where the cloud base got higher. The Ventus was always around 100 meters above us. That's okay, he's just a better pilot and a better glider. But remember one thing, decisions can change everything, no matter what glider you fly. You have to make the right decisions. My co-pilot was flying and we found one last lift before we arrived at the Aber.
Gut vom Stall, sorry.
The terminal was strong at the beginning, but got weaker and weaker, so we decided to move on. The Ventus was already gone. As I mentioned, decisions are everything in cross-country flying. This terminal was a mistake from a co-pilot. It was just not strong enough and we lost some time. We arrived a little bit lower at the Aber, so we needed a thermal. I found 1.5 meters, but it was hard to catch. We decided to move on quickly to avoid the mistake I mentioned before. From here on the weather got weaker and slower. We flew a little bit more to the west before we saw this mistake. At this point, the so-called Kammerbecken is directly in front of us. The Kammerbecken is a local region where thermals are often very weak. I think the reason for this is a local wind system in here, but I'm not very sure. I know that you should have some altitude before crossing. You can find the Kammerbecken very easy on the satellite image. It's the red marked region where no clouds are. I knew that we were low, so it would be risky to cross the Kammerbecken with this altitude. I tried every cloud in front of us. Luckily one worked very well. A 2-meter thermal brought us back to the cloud base, which was at 1600 meters above main sea level. I thought that should be enough for the crossing.
Ich glaube, dass da jetzt ein bisschen zu früh abbiegt.
We arrived at the other side in 1200 meters. From here on it became tricky. The thermals got weaker and the good ones were hard to find. We knew that this was a big mistake. Okay, now we had to deal with it. I searched for a good lift, because we need altitude to get back to the east. We need to cross the Kammerbecken again. The weather was so shit even the camera stopped working properly. I got a 1.8 meter thermal which I used. From here on we had no other choice than make a turn and get back into the good conditions. We were low again when we arrived at the Bavarian forest. We reached the so-called Hoher Bogen at 1000 meters above main sea level. That's below the mountain with its observation towers on top. My co-pilot was flying again. He tried one thermal which was too bad.
Ich kurbel da jetzt mal ein bisschen steiler, weil man jetzt viel kommt. Schneller mal.
I think he had no plan what he should do, because he flew directly to the south.
Weil irgendwo muss da die Wolke entstehen. Ja, nö. Ja. Aber
I saw a cumulus cloud building up, so I took back the control. Luckily the thermal was a good one. We had no other choice, so we used it. We circled a little bit faster than normally, because it was a rough one and we were near a mountain.
Wie gesagt 110 heute.
We left the terminal and flew back to the east. The Ventus told us in the radio that he also turned to the east. He flew even further into the west, which was a bigger mistake. What have I told you about decisions? At this time we made the better one. That's what I like about gliding with others. Everyone has an idea and sometimes one idea is better than the other ones. We found a good line in the Czech Republic. The cloud base was finally high enough, so we decided to fly through Moldau Stausee. We gave the information to the Ventus pilot. Finally we gained some speed. This is where the fun begins. We arrived at the Moldau Stausee and the conditions were still good. The Ventus was somewhere behind us. We decided to fly into Austria and make a turn somewhere in the near of Linz. We found a cloud street which headed to Linz. It ended about 20 kilometers north of Linz, a perfect spot for a final turn. The Ventus told us that he will fly home. He warned us because the weather could end soon. We decided to use the line to Linz and turn home after that. We had a time window of about 2 hours before the terminal end was predicted. It should be enough time to get back to Straubing.
links rum umdrehen, dann sieht es rechts schon aus. Ja.
We were halfway home when we came a little bit low. Alex was flying. He found one terminal with about 1.9 meters after the first circle. But he had a bad terminal technique. He was too steep and made some hard rudder deflections, which often ends in a stall. The Duo Discus doesn't like this. After 3 circles we had 0.8 meters. We went on and found the next terminal and he made the same mistake again, so I gave him a little lesson. The Duo Discus is a very relaxed plane, so you should be also relaxed in terminals. Make some easy rudder deflections and be careful with the bank angle. I circle with round about 40 degrees. Then you will see that the plane has a great behavior in the terminal, and the airspeed stays constant, and you will climb very well. I like the Duo Discus because it's actually a very easy and relaxed glider to fly. After that, Alex made a terrible mistake. I think he was a bit exhausted. This is a good point for a small advice. Listen to your body. You will make more mistakes if your brain is exhausted. We were at the cloud base for a good line. We could follow the line all the way up to the arbor and turn then back to Straubing. Alex left the terminal and flew away from the cloud street. He headed for some small clouds at the Rachel. Unfortunately, they were dead. So we came low. That was mistake number 1. After that he made more mistakes. He flew low over Zwiesel. The airfield am Bruck was still in our glide ratio. At the south of the airfield is the so-called Wiesinger Hang. At the north is the Hauptkamm with the arbor. We were too low for the Hauptkamm, but he flew directly to the arbor. I took control and flew to the Wiesinger Hang. There were still some clouds, maybe they could work. My plan was to try the clouds of the Wiesinger Hang. If we missed the terminals we could fly to Ambruck and start the sustainer engine over the airfield. If the engine failed we could land there. So we had some safety margins. Luckily one cloud worked. It was a weak terminal but we gained enough altitude for the final glide to Straubing. I was pissed off at the moment because the flight could end here, but I also knew that I had to pull myself together if I want to get back home without an engine. I talked to Alex after the flight and we knew that both of us made the mistake. I was very happy when the airfield Straubing was in sight. We flew 502 kilometers with an average speed of 90 kilometers per hour. You will now see the landing. I hope you enjoyed the video and leave a comment below if you would like to help us. Thank you and goodbye.
Straubing Information zum Segelflug Boden. Wir werden die 1292 backtracken und dann davor den ersten Schlepp aufbauen.
Ja, wir haben momentan eine Maschine in der Plattform und die dann auch zur Landung wieder reinkommt. Ihr müsst bitte noch warten mit dem Aufbau.
Okay, dann holen wir erst raus.
Ja, der geht gut runter mit den Doppelstücken.
129 schwer. Bis zu 09. Sie sollten mein Mikrofon oder das Schale können wir ein bisschen auf Westen ausholen, wenn Sie rausholen. Ja, dann müsstet ihr bitte nach Westen verlängern und abwarten, bis wir euch wieder zur Landung holen können. Ja, das machen wir. Information für Segelflug Boden. Ihr könnt dann nach dem zweiten gelandeten Segler den F-Flip auffahren.
Gott, die Bremse. Scheiße, den Puls bremsen sollen. Man sind so warm geworden. Fuck. Aber wirklich schön gerne für hinten.